Hello, this is Cassie and welcome back for another Brutus Monroe video. Today we're going to be using the Stamp Club stamp for July. Isn't that adorable? And we're also going to be using the stencil of the month. This is just beautiful too. We're going to combine those with some Simon Hurley inks and do some ink blending. And we're going to make not only a card, but we're going to make an envelope. So let's start with our card panel. I just have some white cardstock here, and I've pulled out the stencil, and we're going to do some blending with the embossing ink through the stencil. Now this is nothing new. If you've watched me before, I've done this several times. It's probably one of my favorite techniques to do through stencils, but then again, I think I say that about every technique. I just like to have fun with all these. So I'm going to take my mini ink blending tool and I'm just going to pounce the color through the stencil. And the reason I'm kind of pouncing is because I don't want any of that to seep underneath the stencil. I want it to be a fairly clean image. And I'm just doing the embossing ink, and it's going to be really hard to tell if I actually did a good job. So I'm kind of going to look at it in the light and hope for the best. I have some Brutus Monroe Icicle embossing powder, which is a clear embossing powder. It's a fine detail clear embossing powder, and it works perfectly for this technique that we're going to be doing. Love it. So we'll just cover that. I dump it, get my hand across it, and so we'll do it again, and then we're going to heat emboss that with our heat tool. So all I'm going to do is basically hold this up in the light quite a bit and try to see if it's shiny. And where it goes from a matte to a shiny is how I know that it's completely done. But I'll keep working and checking it in the light to make sure that I have all of that powder heated and embossed. And when that's ready, then we're also going to pull out one of the color companion envelopes. This is an alabaster. They've got several colors, but we're going to take the alabaster one and we're going to do the same process. The difference is we're not going to do it all across the outside of that envelope simply because we want to have room to write our recipient's address and also have the stamps that we need to mail it. So I'm just basically sticking to that lower left-hand corner, pouncing, and I don't want it to be a perfect image. It doesn't need to be. And once again, we'll take that Icicle embossing powder and do the same process. You can wipe away where you don't like, if you don't like where the embossing powder is, you can use a dry paintbrush and wipe that away if you'd like more organic edges. I'm not going to do that. We're just going to go ahead and heat this just the same way we did before, checking it in the light, making sure that it's melted. And when that's all melted, we're going to get ready to do our ink blending. I have some Simon Hurley inks. We're going to start with Sike. That is the yellow ink. And I have my Ergonomic blending brush. These are now carried in the Brutus Monroe store. And I'm starting primarily with that color in the center. And I really like the Ergonomic brushes for a lot of coverage. Like if you're doing an entire background like I'm planning to do, that's good for that. I like my smaller blending brushes or makeup brushes or whatever you might have for littler areas like this. And I'm starting with the lightest color and moving my way up, so that way I'm kind of lazy. That way I don't have to clean off my brush in between. So this next color is called Slippery When Wet. It's just a little bit deeper color, almost like an orange, but a very light orange. And then we'll go on to our panel and we'll work that color in. And then our final color that we're going to grab once we're happy with our Slippery When Wet is the traffic cone, which is a bright orange color. These all blended just beautifully together. You get this nice darker edge, and I think that's another reason why I really like the Ergonomic brush. It's just like blending is so effortless, and I don't have to go back over it 100 times. And then I'll take my blending brush one more time and just go around the edges of my envelope. And so this will leave plenty of room to write my recipient's address and name, and also the stamps to send it off. Okay, I'm going to switch gears here because I do want to show you how I clean off my blending brushes. Maybe I'll do a separate video this someday for those that miss it, but I am going to be using the very cool blender brush scrubber along with my Squeaky Clean. I'll just spray some Squeaky Clean right onto my brush, and you can tell it kind of pushes that color away. And then we're going to hold that blender brush scrubber. You can, I mean, I suppose that's meant to, you could put it down on top of your glass mat as well, but I'm just going to hold it like this and kind of scrub my brush all across that. It's got some different grooves and different areas on top of that blender brush scrubber that gets into the bristles a little bit without ruining them. And then I'll pull in a microfiber cloth and I'll just wipe off my brush and yeah. So this is great if you only have one brush or just a couple of brushes. I would love to, when money allows, sometime down the road, continue to get these because I really like them. And that way I can have them for different color families. But until then, I'll keep doing this process. And I'll also show you how you can do it for the blender brush. It's the same process, but you'll really get to see how much color was on this brush. And I need to do something like this in between simply because I'm not very good at cleaning off my brush just on a microfiber cloth. Now this will be wet for a little bit, so my suggestion is I hope that you're done with any of your blending before you move on to doing this. But yeah, if you're done blending, you can go ahead and do something like this process. And then to clean off your scrubber, you can either take it under some water, some nice warm water, or as I did, use my Squeaky Clean on it and wipe it off with my microfiber cloth. So easy enough, but yeah, it's a great way to clean off your brushes and then set those aside to dry. Love that product. All right, now we're going to move on with our card and our envelope. I'm going to ink up that Stamp Club stamp, which is this adorable little mouse sitting on some cheese. I've inked it up with some Raven Detail ink, and then we're going to color it with my ARTEZA EverBlend markers. One of the things about the ink that I'm not very good about, as you can tell, is you should probably heat set it before you start coloring. I've noticed that with my ARTEZA markers, it kind of bleeds a little bit more than with my Copic markers. I'm not sure exactly why that is, but you can tell I do have some ink bleeding a little bit, but that's because I didn't heat set my ink before I started coloring. Or you could just walk away for a little while, whatever the case may be. But if you need to get coloring right away, like, I typically do, you may want to heat set it before you get started coloring. All right, now we'll move on to our little mouse, and all I'm doing, as I usually do, is I'm going lightest to darkest, as I did with the cheese. And so I'll put down that that gray color to start with, and then I'll come in with one darker color, and it's significantly darker, but you can blend this out just using the lighter color. So once I'm done there, I will bring in that 251 once again and just kind of blend those colors out, and he's starting to look really, really cute. Then I realize I have to color in his ears, and I need his little muzzle colored, and the color itself that I grabbed is a little too orange. I'm not sure why I grabbed that particular color. So I'll bring in a next lighter color, and it still seems a little orange to me. And then I color his muzzle that same color, but I end up really liking it in the end. I think it's kind of cute. And I'll bring in one lighter color just for the tips of his ears, which is what I wish I would have done for his mouth. And then I forgot that I needed to color his tail still. So once that's done, I'm going to fussy cut him out. I'll even use my circle foundation dies and cut out a white circle from some white cardstock. Now I'm going to take some slate cardstock. I'm just going to cut that in half. And then I'm going to cut two small strips. I don't know, they're not even 1/4 of an inch. I just randomly cut them. And then I'm also going to stamp my sentiment on there. I wasn't exactly sure if I wanted it to be stamped in black or white, but I decided to start with the black and see what I thought of that. And once that was stamped down, I was actually pretty happy with that color, so I decided to stop there. And I'll use my guillotine trimmer to trim this down. And my favorite way to do it with the guillotine trimmer is just to line up the sentiment with the edge of the clear panel on top. That is how I found to be the easiest for me. Now we'll start attaching our little gray strips. I just like that because it brought out the mouse a little bit more, made him pop even that much more. And it was another nice neutral color to have along with the white. Because I feel like the white is just like a staple, but then you add a neutral to it and it really kind of grounds it. I'm trying to line this up on my glass mat, and I'm not going to trim that off just yet. I'll wait till everything dries. But I'll stick down my circle, and then I'll stick down my sentiment when I'm happy with, I think, how that looks. And I'm going to leave that, kind of hanging off as well, but we'll use our glass mat to line that up also. And then we're going to attach our little mouse. I thought about putting some foam tape on him, but I decided against it. We'll just stick him down. And then I'll flip these over and I'll trim off all the excess now that everything's fairly dry. And then he's ready to attach to our Not Your Mama's Heavyweight card base so that I have cut down to 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches and scored at 4.25 inches. And then of course we do have to stamp something on the inside. So I'm going to take that little mouse and I'll ink him up with some Slippery When Wet ink, which was my mid-tone ink. for my blending, and then I'll just stamp him right there inside. And I love how that turned out. What a great combo. Fun way to make a card and an envelope to match. So I would love to know what you think of that if you want to leave that down in the comments section. If you liked this video, please hit the like button and subscribe if you have not already done so. And as always, I will see you very soon in another video. Bye, everybody.